Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our training session, Social Media Strategy for the MICE Sector. I'm Joanna from IPIM. We are very honored to have Mrs. Marlieke Kemp-Janssen, the founder of Aureum Hospitality Advisors, as our speaker, and Mr. Mike Williams, Senior Partner of GainingEdge, as our facilitator. Now, may I invite Mr. Benson now, the President of Macao Trade and Investment Promotion Initiative, to deliver a welcome speech for us.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the online seminar, which is held by Macao Trade and Investment Promotion Institute and facilitated by GainingEdge. It is our great honor to have the founder of Aureum Hospitality Advisor, Ms. Marlieke Kemp-Janssen, to share with us her insight about today's topic, social media strategy for the MICE sector. We are also happy to have participation of mainland China, including Jiangsu, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Zhuhai, and Xiamen, etc. In the digital era, social media has changed the way we live our lives. It is not only an information hub, but also a powerful tool for business of all sizes to reach prospects and customers. Changes have also been experiencing within my sector. Acceleration of digitalization is happening during the global pandemic. IPIM has started to set up online exhibition platforms for our signature events last year, like the 25th Macao International Trade and Investment Fair, MIF, in order to break through the geographical constraints. Such platform is featured with cloud matching, live streaming of the exhibitions, and other online tools. Both online and offline exhibitions producing synergistic effects and concluded successfully. Moreover, to extend the success we have achieved from the last series of online training courses held by IPIM, we are here today to continue to support our MICE industry to seize new business trends. Last but not least, I would like to extend my gratitude to Mr. Mike Williams of GainingEdge for taking the role of facilitator again, and to all the participants here for showing support to our online seminar. Let's now leave the time to our honorable speaker. Please enjoy.
Thank you, Benson, from President of IPIM, for those encouraging words to start off with, and welcome to our next in-line series on online presentations and training. And we're honoured today to have Marlieke Kemp-Janssen speaking for us. She's the founder and managing director of Aureum Hospitality Advisors. Marlieke provides a personal and results-driven revenue management and digital marketing solutions to companies in and beyond the hospitality industry. Marlieke has over 10 years of experience in the international level with working with hotels. She's held positions as revenue manager, e-commerce manager, digital marketing manager, and marketing communication managers in a number of luxury brand hotels in both Indonesia and Cambodia. Combining all her experience, she successfully helped other businesses grow and implement proven revenue management and digital marketing strategies. During the presentation, Marlieke will be stopping to take questions, but if you've got any questions during this session, please put them on the chat line below, and we'll respond to those as we can. And a number of you have sent in pre-messages or pre-questions as well, which Marlieke will also cover during the presentation. We've got a great attendance this morning with I think over 100 registrations, which is I think is close to a record for IPIM. It's obviously a very important topic for everybody, and if you're not heavily involved in social media implementation at the moment, you should be. So hopefully we can give you some good tips on how to take your social media strategy forward into the future. So I'm going to hand over now to Marlieke and look forward to your questions during the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in today for this webinar. And let me first share my screen with you so that you can see the presentation. Once again, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in today. So in today's session, we're going to cover a lot of content on digital marketing, mainly implemented for the MICE segment. Right, so after this seminar, you'll know how to integrate social media campaigns as a part of your digital and marketing strategy. I'll also be talking about the importance of aligning a social media plan with your overall company strategies. I'm going to talk about why it is important to focus on the right audience and also how to find the right audience. You will learn everything you need to know about buyer personas and also how to reach and engage your target audience. There'll be a short slide about multi-channel strategies, as well as choosing the right channels to reach your audience. And at the end of the presentation, we'll also go into detail on how you can stand out from the crowd with unique and engaging content. And when we get to that point, I will also share some examples with you. So let's start with the introduction. As you can see, I have broken down the program into 4 sections. So the first one, we talk about the basic of social media. And to do this, I would like to start with a quick poll. And the question for all of you is on how many social media channels are you personally active? Right? And with active, what I mean is that you check the channels on a daily basis and also that you engage with friends or businesses. So if you, for example, have an account but hardly ever check it, then please don't count it. Just think of the ones that you're actively using. We're going to give you another 30 seconds to respond. Almost half of the participants have filled out the poll yet. All right, 10 more seconds. Good, thank you everyone for filling out the poll. So 21 people, that's 60% of everyone who responded, said they're active on 1 to 3 channels. 33% on 4 to 6 channels. We also have someone who is not active on social media and 1 person on 7 or more channels. So we'll get back on these numbers later in the presentation. Okay, we can close the poll. And we're going back to the basics first, because what exactly is social media? So you can read with me if you want to, because social media is a broad term that basically includes a very rich and diverse landscape of platforms, of websites, of online tools that allow people to connect, to express themselves, to interact, and also to comment and to share. Right, so this is the basic description of social media. So then the next question we should look at is, why do people use social media? They use them for both private information, like, for example, communication with friends or sharing things they enjoy doing. They also use it to interact with businesses. And when they interact with businesses, they're not so much interacting with your business as such, but they're interacting with the people behind the business. And that's very important to keep in mind when you do your own social media. Right, so they're basically looking for inspiration and information. And then last but not least, and that's quite obvious nowadays, people also use them to talk about firms, to talk about brands, about products or services. So in a way, we can also consider social media as the next TripAdvisor or a review platform, because people love to share their opinions online. Then from a marketing perspective, social media are being used for all possible marketing goals. You can think of brand positioning, guest service. We can use social media to gain market insight or customer insight. In today's landscape, social media is also word of mouth marketing, right? So social media sites, and I'm going to highlight a few during this presentation, but if we look at Facebook or LinkedIn or even Google+, they can be very efficient platforms that basically serve as a hub for all your social media activities, right? Facebook, WeChat, Twitter, these are channels that can be used to reach broad audiences because generally they have a huge following. A lot of people are active on these channels. Then we have video and photo sharing platforms. Think of Instagram or Flickr or YouTube even, right? That's where we can visualize guest experiences. A short mention to blogs, because blogs are very niche market penetration tools. And with blogs, we can reach individual audience segments, and blogs in general help the SEO strategy. Now, SEO is extremely important, but this is a topic we'll have to save for another time because we don't have enough time to cover this. So having said all of this, social media should not be viewed as a standalone marketing initiative, right? Social media marketing should complement the integrated marketing strategy of your business. It also has a broader place in the overall branding, also in the overall voice of the customer, or in our case, voice of the clients, voice of the guests. And it is not only about campaigns, even though a lot of people still tend to believe that social media is a standalone channel. So here we go, right? We must view social media as a multiplier that integrates with and also enhances existing marketing communication strategies. In other words, rather than creating a social media campaign, we should make all of our marketing campaigns social. And what I mean with that is that, let's say in your marketing communication plan, your objective is to drive more MICE business rather than short stay leisure business, then it would only make sense if your social media campaigns support this objective. So in that case, your content would focus on your meeting facilities, on meeting offers, and not so much on local attractions, because local attractions are generally for the leisure trips. So if we take that to the next level, then we see that your social media strategy should not only be integrated with your marketing strategy, but also with your overall company strategy. And to better understand that, I will share a few examples with you. So let's look at the business objective to grow your brand. When you're trying to achieve that, your marketing goal is going to be to build awareness. And awareness you can achieve through both online and offline efforts. We can do social media campaigns. We can also put an advertisement on a billboard, or we can buy positions in printed magazines. So there are different ways, online and offline, to achieve your marketing goals. And build awareness in this case is a goal with a bigger objective from company perspective to grow your brand. So you see how social media is like only a part of your overall business objective. Another example is when your business objective is to drive leads and sales. In that case, your marketing goal should be focused on conversions. I know the question about social media is always, what is my ROI? How much money are we going to make? Well, one thing to keep in mind is that conversions are not always signed contracts. If we talk about digital marketing, you might want to grow your email database. And in that case, every sign up to your database is a conversion. And that might not bring in money on the short term, but in the long term, all those people interested in your product and service could bring in revenue at a later stage. Okay, so that concludes the introduction part. So let's have a look if there are any questions from the audience.
No questions so far.
All right. Well, again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and otherwise there will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So now let's look at audience, which is the second part of this webinar. So how can you hit a target you don't even have? Well, that's a question we have to think about. Because can you reach a target audience if you have not properly defined it? Well, I don't think so. Because if you don't know who your target audience is, then you also don't know which channels they use. You don't even know which language they speak. And that's not only in the sense of Mandarin or English or Portuguese, but you don't know if they require a formal or a more informal approach. You also don't know in which part of their consumer journey they are. And that's a very important thing to know as well, because you will address a meeting planner who is still in the first phase of the journey differently than a meeting planner who is actually ready to book. Or look at wedding planners, right? Wedding planners require a different approach than when you target newly engaged couples directly. So why do we define our audience? Well, first of all, simply because we do not want to waste time, and time is money. So instead of time, we should say resources, maybe. Talking to people that are not your audience, right? Because I saw that a lot of you participants are sales managers or director of sales and marketing. And would you go out on a sales call to a company that has close to zero potential? Well, it's actually the same on social media. You shouldn't aim to reach everyone. You should only reach those that are potential clients or that are interested in your brand, interested in your service. Or better put, people that are interested in the story that you have to tell. In the second place, it's also important to convey the right message at the right time to the right audience. As with offline marketing, you don't want to spend money on promoting your, let's say, beach hotel in a magazine that's all about winter destinations. You probably also don't want to put an advertisement for your wedding venue in a sports magazine. So it's really important to make sure that your message is right to different target audiences. Then the third reason to define your audience is because you do not want to be generic or boring. The thing is, if you want to reach everyone, your message is going to be very generic. And generic is boring, and people don't remember generic and boring. So if we take a step back in time and we go back to the time when we could only advertise in printed magazines, you know, there were 10, 15 spots available. So your competition was limited. But on social media, everyone can advertise. So there's no limit on what your competitors can do, right? If everybody in the same niche market would use advertising, can you imagine how many advertising spots people see in their feed? So being boring is then not going to help you being top of mind when it actually comes to decision making. So how do we make sure that we target the right audience with engaging content? And that were also some pre-conference questions that I saw. How can we find our audience? well, the foundation for success, and that's in virtually every aspect of sales and marketing, is to establish your buyer persona. So what is a buyer persona? Well, I thought let's ask Google, because that way you have the detailed description on your screen so you can read with me. A buyer persona is a detailed description of someone who represents your target audience. Okay, this is not a real customer, but a fictional person who embodies the characteristics of your best potential customers. You'll give this customer persona a name, demographic details, interest, and behavioral traits. So in other words, we're going to come up with a fictional character that is exactly our target audience. So while we're getting clear on the target market, it's important to realize that this actually touches on multiple areas. So first of all, product or service creation, because that's where it starts with, right? What solutions or what services can you develop and also deliver to your buyer persona to anticipate and solve their problems? Because at the end of the day, selling is basically problem solving. So you'll have to address their pain points, and I'll get back on that later. The second area of impact, we can mention copywriting. So in what way should offers, newsletters, social media posts, any type of copywriting be described to attract and also convert your prospects? Think of the tone of voice, because that can be very important when you're reaching out to your target audience. Then we have email marketing. You know, which buyer persona should receive one type of email marketing versus another type of email marketing? You are going to want to send a different message to corporate meeting planners than to wedding planners. Then next on the list, and that's social media. So that's our favorite, right? So which platforms are most important to be on? And which platform should we be very active on? So just being there is not enough. We have to be active. And then lastly, I also would like to mention paid traffic, because where should you spend your marketing dollars? And maybe even more important, what targeting options do you use? So this goes back to the beginning of the presentation when I mentioned that social media should be part of your overall marketing strategy. Because here you can see that it's only the first step of bringing different channels together into one campaign. And that all starts with your buyer persona. Now, one very important aspect in almost every business, but especially in the hospitality industry, is trust. Does your client trust your business? Can your client be sure that your business takes care of their needs? And to develop trust, there's one thing we have to do. We have to show them that we understand their needs better than they do. And that will take work and a lot of imagination. But if you have your buyer persona already defined, then you will be well equipped to create and market your services and packages that will convert your prospect into loyal bookers in the long term. So one example I'd like to bring up here, and I'm not sure if there are people from Grand Hyatt in the audience, but I found the hybrid meetings by Hyatt package. And this is a perfect example for this era because, you know, with COVID happening, we know that large meetings and conferences are not really ideal right now. So a lot of businesses are simply hesitant because they don't want to put the health of their team, of their partners or their clients on the line. So a lot of meetings are not happening at the moment. So what Hyatt did is they came up with this hybrid meeting package that allows people to gather together from different venues. So perhaps one group of 15 people in Macao, and then another group is in Hong Kong, and another group of participants is in Singapore. So that's how they are virtually facilitating the meetings. And that's a great example of how we have to show that we understand the needs of your bookers. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to create a buyer persona. So one side note before we start doing this is that you will most likely have multiple buyer personas because, like I said before, we can't target everyone with the same message because then we'll be generic. So we create multiple buyer personas that represent our target audiences. So if you are a hotel, you will have leisure guests and corporate guests, right? So that's already two different buyer personas. Maybe you cater to boutique meetings or you're organizing large-scale conferences. That's also two different buyer personas. And then another example is your domestic and your overseas market. It's also two different buyer personas. So that's just a few examples. So you can imagine that you'll need more than one buyer persona down the line. So I broke it down into 3 steps. And the first step to take is to list all the common demographic traits of your target audience, of your ideal customer. You can do a brain dump based on the market research you've done, based on your database of previous bookers. And I recommend you don't do this alone. Get together with your team because more people sharing more insights, you can get a lot more into detail. Then in the second step, you're going to give your buyer persona a name and also a face. And that might sound silly, but it will help you being more creative when you get to the content creation phase. And then in the third step, you're actually going to step into your buyer persona shoes and you're going to see life through their eyes, basically. I have prepared for you a workshop with a list of questions. And if you go through all the questions one by one and answer these and then put them on the worksheet, that should help you creating your own buyer persona. Of course, that might not cover everything. So if you can be more specific, please do so, because the more information you have, the better you can target. So we don't have all day today. So I already filled up the sheet for you. So we're going to have a look at that. And then don't forget, it's just one example of a buyer persona. So meet Julie. Right, Julie is 29. She's a married mother. She has 2 girls. She's based out of Hong Kong, and she completed a bachelor's degree. Her current position is a personal assistant to a CEO. Challenges and pain points are very important points to look at, because in this case, Julie, she is challenged with organizing meetings for her boss. That means finding the right location. And she's also challenged with the fact that her choice of location, the venue is COVID safe, and that COVID protocols are followed. And her pain points is that it's hard to find venues with virtual meeting facilities. She also wants the cancellation policy to be flexible, because perhaps overnight something happens and she has to reschedule, or she has to cancel, or the number of participants changes. So in today's landscape, cancellation policy is very important. Also think of objections to the sales that she might have. So maybe the price point doesn't match, or the location is not ideal, or there are tech limitations. And also very important, what is her role in the purchase process? Well, in this example, Julie is only an influencer, meaning that she has to gather the proposals, and then her boss, she will make the final decision. She has to sign off. So when you know all of these details, then it's time for the next step. Then we start engaging with our target audience online. And engaging with our target audience is also the next chapter of today's presentation. So before we move on, let's check if there are any questions from the audience.
No questions so far, Marlieke.
All right, then we continue to engagement. So the first question we have to answer here is how to find your target audience. I mean, now we know who the target audience is, so how to find it online. So then it's very important and something that's often overlooked, but you can actually upload your email database into, for example, Facebook Ads Manager. And then Facebook will match email addresses with people on the platform, and you can target them with specific promotions. So the first way of finding your audience online is by uploading your email database. Another way of finding target audience is by being active in social media groups. Like LinkedIn, for example, or Facebook has a lot of different groups. Groups where executives come together, groups where people talk about traveling to a destination. So if you find these right groups, there's lots of opportunities to connect with potential bookers, with wedding couples, with any type of audience that matches your buyer persona. Also make sure that your content is relevant for your audience, right? Because let's say I am your target audience, but I really don't like your content because you're always talking about things that are not relevant for me. I will unfollow you. I might not even consider your venue or destination anymore for my trip. So being relevant is very important. And that also includes to use industry hashtags, because industry hashtags make that your content can be found by people that are not following you yet. So you can grow your follower base and expand your target audience by using these industry hashtags. And there we are again, the social media ads. Because with social media ads, you can create advertisements and you can actually target exactly your Julie or your own buyer persona. Right? One thing I would like to mention here, because it goes back to ROI again, a lot of people ask the question like, what's my ROI going to be? Well, I would say don't be afraid to spend money on growing your follower base, on finding and connecting with your target audience, because in the long term, these people might stay with you, they might book with you. And in the long term can be 3 months, 6 months, or maybe a year from now, but you won't see actual cash right away. Right? It's just like with your organic content, right? Sales is not the only objective here, because social media is a marketing channel. All right, so we know where to find them. We know who our audience is. So how can we actually reach them? So I think a lot of you will now think that we're going to start creating the content, right? Because we're all marketers and we want to bring our message across. But before we do that, we need to figure out how we can reach them. Because maybe we already know who Julie is, but we don't know that our message will show up on her social media feed. So we need to know where we can find her. On which platform is she active? So I put down a few general assumptions. And I'm calling it older generations, and I do not want to offend anyone with that. But in general, people born before 1945, they have increased Facebook use in the past few years. In fact, it almost doubled. I mean, I think a lot of younger people actually started using Facebook a little bit less because their parents came online all of a sudden. So Facebook is a widely used platform. Twitter appeals to younger and often tech-savvy people. Like 38% of the users are between 18 and 29 years old, and 26% are between 30 and 49. Instagram also appeals to younger audiences because we know that 35% of the users are between 25 and 34 years, and 30% is between 18 and 24. So let's look at some of the social media channels. I listed down 8 different channels here, and they all have different use, right? Instagram is all about visualizing experiences. Photos and videos are very important. Now, Instagram is used not only for personal experiences, but it's also widely used by companies to share experiences or services they offer. Twitter is a great channel for customer service, but it means that you have to manage it well, because if you ignore it, then people are not going to be happy. Facebook is a little bit of both. They have put a lot of effort into improving their visual aspects, and they have opened up a lot of opportunities for businesses to feature their products with their integrated shop and everything. And at the other end, their messenger app is making it a lot easier for people to connect with businesses. LinkedIn, I know it's not a very popular platform in Macau, and also in the area of China, Hong Kong, Taiwan. I still want to mention it here quickly because it's the world's most popular platform for business networking and for generating leads. So this is a more business platform where you are interacting as a sales manager, or where you are interacting as, well, basically as your buyer persona, right? Because it's a corporate environment. Pinterest, well, we can have a very long discussion about Pinterest, and I will not do that, because is Pinterest social media or is it a search engine? So it's a fine line. I know that it contributes a lot to SEO. So even if you're not getting your social media engagement out of it, it could still be very interesting to monitor from SEO perspective. YouTube is a channel that we often forget about as a social media channel, but it's actually the second largest search engine online. So a lot of people, they turn to YouTube when they have questions like how to do this, how to do that, what's the best way of achieving a certain goal. So there are hundreds of videos out there. So YouTube should definitely be considered as well. Of course, WeChat, we can't miss WeChat on this list. It's a multi-purpose platform. It's called China's app for everything, and it has 1 billion monthly active users. So it's really big. And lastly, and that's a new one on the list, that's TikTok. It's a digital space for people and businesses to show their creative side with short videos. So I've added in another poll. So I'd like to ask you another question. Now, at the beginning, I also asked one, right? And then I asked on how many channels are you active? And 60% answered on 1 to 3. And on the previous slide, I actually highlighted 8. So not many people are active on all of these channels. So what I like to ask you, on which channel do you, as an individual, spend the most time? I see answers are coming in already, so thank you very much. Okay, let's keep the poll open for another 10 seconds. So if you haven't voted yet, please feel free to do. All right, so the big winner, and that's not surprisingly here, is WeChat, 75%, closely followed by Facebook, 56%, and YouTube as well, 48%. So thank you for participating in this poll. So I have also looked up some statistics on social media usage in Macau, China, Hong Kong, and a few more on the next page. So a small disclaimer here, because you'll probably find different numbers on different sources. But at the time of making this presentation, I thought that this one was the most, was reflecting the most updated data. So it's from GS StatCounter, and it's from March 2021. So the key takeaway here is that, except for China, Facebook is actually widely considered the most popular platform. So I mentioned LinkedIn just before, and I got that information also from this source. Less than 1% of social media interaction happens on LinkedIn. So take in the numbers. I'm not going to read them all out. They're also in the presentation you'll receive after the webinar. On the next slide, we'll also have Australia, Singapore, and I've added Brazil because I saw a question about Brazil in the registration, the pre-session survey. So there's a lot of potential on Facebook. I'm going to move on to the next slide. And that's the question, should you be present on all social media platforms? Well, unless you have an extremely broad audience and also unlimited funds, I would say no. You don't have to be on all platforms, because look at the first question of today, the poll, 60% of us is active on only 1 to 3 channels. So not everyone is everywhere. Should you be on social media at all? Well, that's a simple answer in my opinion, that's yes, because if our future clients and our clients are online, so should we, right? Maybe it's not to sell, but at least we can listen and we can try to understand them. Because social media, we know, can play a role in pre-sales, building the trust, finding out what the concerns are, trying to understand what solutions our clients are looking for, and guest service. People tend to complain on social media, but they also tend to share pictures of things they really love. If you welcome them with a nice colorful drink, or if you have the swan or the elephant towel in the room, for example, people love to share that kind of stuff. And when done well, you can also get business from Facebook. So that also gets back to the point from the beginning of the presentation, right? Integrating social media should be part of your entire social media strategy and even your company strategy. So we see that here again. So the short answer to the question, should you be present on all platforms? No, because you can only connect with your buyer persona on the channels that they are active on. So it's all about them and not so much about you. So here I would like to share a little bit about multi-channel marketing and why it is important. Because we now have established that our business has multiple buyer personas to cater to. And another thing we have to keep in mind is that our buyer persona can take on different roles throughout the day. But going back to Julie, one moment she is looking to get proposals for her boss for an upcoming meeting. But a few hours later, she might be looking for a family trip for the weekend with her husband and children. So those things are often believed to be multi-channel marketing, but they're actually not, right? With multi-channel marketing, we mean that we use multiple channels to send the same message across. Right, so you can promote your upcoming promotion on Facebook, but it would be a lot more powerful if you also add a newsletter, if you do a pop-up banner on your website, maybe if you can do Google Ads, right? So using multiple channels to get the same message across. And that can definitely help you on increasing your return on investment. It also helps you improving connections, improving leads, and it can definitely increase conversions. Because when you're able to connect with your buyer personas in ways that fit their unique leads, they may be more likely to book with you, or maybe not now, but then in the future. And again, people are not so much connecting with your company as with the people in that company. Right, so now we know who our audience is. We know on what channel they are active. So here we are, it's time to start creating content. So I'm going to share a few tips with you. These are all things that I keep in mind when doing content for my clients. I will also share a few examples after this slide. So the first tip is please avoid passive voice, because by addressing your readers directly, your message is a lot more personal. And we need personal to connect, right? Also, it's important to mention your most important information first. We don't have unlimited characters in our messages. Facebook, for example, cuts your message short. So make sure that the first sentence makes people want to click that read more button. I tend to not use link shorteners unless you have a personalized link shortener. What I mean by that is that when you send people to bit.ly / some string of code, they don't know where they end up, so they might be hesitant to click it. But if you send them to yourcompany.com, they see that they will end up on your website. Playing with emotions, I think that's a very good one, because if you look at posts that go viral, they all have one thing in common, because they're speaking to emotions. Some emotions that you can use are gratitude, fear, admiration, pride, love. There are many more. I'll just mention a few here. Next one is tell a story. Storytelling. Well, that's of course a very inspiring way of communication that connects people. Take readers on a journey with your story. And if you get that right, they will get to know you and your team. And that's when you start building trust, which we already have established is very important. You can tell a story about the most silly things in your company. For a hotel, for example, you can tell a very nice story about a pillow. You can tell a story about an apple, right? So you just have to be very, very creative. As long as the story is interesting, you will be able to capture people's attention. Another mention for popular hashtags. So before I already mentioned about industry related hashtags, we can also leverage on popular hashtags like Throwback Thursday, for example. I like these when there is a day that you don't have you don't have any content, or you already did your promotions and you're not sure what to post. Just look at a list of popular hashtags and use one of these. Next one, it sounds very obvious, but try to avoid mistakes. And that can be grammar, but it can also be autocorrect. Often social media posts are created in between or on the go or right in the heat of the moment. And when you're doing it with your mobile phone, you have this nice autocorrect function that sometimes changes your story entirely. So make sure to double check before you hit the send button. Scroll stopping creatives, because a picture says more than 1,000 words. Meaningful images and graphics, they grab attention. Right, so a successful strategy is all about creating scroll stopping creatives. And then the last one is very important, that you add a call to action. You might want your readers to visit your website or to send you a message or maybe to tag a friend. And a call to action can be anything, but try to add one to each of your posts. So I mentioned examples. This is about emotions, and this goes back to the beginning of the pandemic. I am active on LinkedIn myself, and I saw hundreds of posts about Expedia, because at some stage Expedia had to lay off people, and a lot of people started talking about it. They explained that they worked for Expedia for so many years. They loved their job, how hard it was to lose the job, how grateful they were to be working for Expedia, and so on. So all of these are emotions. And then they close the post by saying, okay, it's time for my next journey. So if you know of any job openings, let me know. And these posts got so much engagement that lots and lots of people actually ended up finding new jobs through LinkedIn. All because of the emotions they put into their post. The next example is about popular hashtags. This was a post at the beginning of the pandemic here in Cambodia. So that's a month ago, a month and a half ago. So the event of this hotel got canceled. So we couldn't really promote anything. We couldn't ask people to gather together. So instead we said, okay, Throwback Thursday, let's look at the event we had last month. And we still keep the subject of this event called Gin and Fin alive. Right. Another example I have are the scroll stopping images I just mentioned. Well, I think any one of us who sees a picture like this will stop scrolling and check out what it's about. And I can understand your concern, like, hey, but we're talking about meeting an event, so what does a beach have to do with that? Well, in this case, Marriott said, that awkward moment you forgot to hit mute during a conference call. So it's definitely related to our sector. Something unexpected. So people stop scrolling, they start liking, they start commenting and sharing, and that's how you get your engagement going. So we have different types of content. Creating content is definitely not easy. Important is that we plan our content ahead so that we know what's coming up throughout the month or the quarter or even the whole year, right? So just sharing how I like to work is the first thing I do is I start looking at marketing campaigns. Do we have any campaigns coming up that we have to promote? This is where you have to look at your annual marketing calendar. I believe every one of you has an annual marketing calendar where they have your spring promotions, your summer campaign, when you're going to have wedding campaigns, etc. So use these in your content plan. Then also look at holidays or special days, because special days, well, there's a special day for almost everything. Bring your dog to work, International Chocolate Day. Often you can use these special days to build content around, and that can be quite engaging. Quotes are engaging as well. Use a relevant hashtag like Motivational Monday, for example. Ask people to tag a friend. I forgot the ask me anything, hashtag AMA. With hashtag AMA, you can ask followers to ask you questions. What do they want to know about you as a person? So you show who's behind the buttons, or about the company. So either way, it's possible. We have user-generated content, UGC. That's when you're repurposing content from others. So your guests or your bookers, they have posted something on their channels, and you simply repost it on your own channel. One thing I'd like to share here: make sure that you have and that you ask for okay from the original poster. Right? They have to approve that you use their content. And it would be very nice if you tag them when you publish. Behind the scenes posts are usually doing really well because, again, right, people are connecting with the person behind the brand. And when you can show a face, like maybe your staff, your wait staff, or your housekeeping staff, or your chef, people give you a like for sure. Event examples, and well, you should share off what you can do, right? So if you had a major event and you had stunning decoration and it was all successful, why not show it off? Because that's a potential case study for other meeting planners or wedding planners. Promote your business. Not every post should focus on sales, but yeah, you definitely have to dedicate 1 or 2 posts per week to promote your business. And then again, COVID safety measures for events. We saw that it's one of Julie's challenges, right? That the venue has to be COVID safe. So show your audience that you comply with these protocols. So as promised, here are a few examples. The first one is a marketing campaign. So this hotel, they posted a picture of their meeting room, and it's COVID safe, right? There is social distancing in place. And in the text, they plain and simple mention their full day and their half day meeting package. So once or twice a week, you just have to do campaigns like this. At the end, I also have another example of how to sell your packages. Holidays or special days, an example of Marina Bay Sands. This is a Halloween post. The reason I shared this is because they got 15,000 plus likes, and in general, their content only does 3,000 to 4,000 likes. So this got a huge engagement. Achievements, when you get an award or when you held a successful event, show off, be confident to share what you're capable of. Tag a friend. This is another nice leisure picture, but you can tie it in with mice easily. And you simply ask, tag a friend who you want to bring here in the comments. Why is that important? Because the more comments, the more likes, the higher it appears in the news feeds. So it's more likely that more people will see your post. An example of user-generated content here. This is a video from a wedding at a hotel. So the wedding couple actually shared this video with the property, and the property repurposed it by sharing it on their channel. As I mentioned, behind the scenes, give your team a face. Yeah, here we see Kyla. the wedding planner from the Grand Hyatt in Singapore. This post also got a lot more engagement than their average Instagram post. An example of an event, this is a hotel here in Phnom Penh. The hotel was open for less than a month when they hosted Supercars Cambodia. So they posted this video, and it is really simple. It's just with the iPhone waiting when all the cars depart. It's a 1-minute video, and they got a huge engagement out of it. They got over 200 shares, which is quite amazing for a newly opened hotel. To promote your business. So the first example I showed was just plain and simple adding your packages. This is another way of promoting your business when you combine it with showing a recent event setup. So here they just say, okay, this is what we did. You want to have your birthday, social event, or your next meeting here, just contact us. So I like to call this soft selling. And the other one where you put in your prices, that's a hard sell. COVID safety measures. I think we highlighted this several times already in this session. So I thought it's very much worth adding an example of this as well. This is a convention center in Bali. They did a special video on what steps they have taken to ensure all the participants are safe, like social distancing. Well, the link is in there. So after the session, when you receive this presentation, you can watch the whole video if you want to. Social distancing, temperature scanning, cleaning, everything is covered in this video. So that's a great way to show that you are actually ready to welcome guests in this new era. All right, so that closes the third section about engagement. So let's check again if there are any questions from the audience before we're going to round it up.
Marlieke, there is 3 questions already online. The first one is from Philippe. In an integrated resort environment, we do have different types of buyer persona, leisure versus MICE. Would you set up different accounts to target them separately?
No, I would not set up different accounts because first of all, that's going to take you a lot more work and effort. But what you could do, well, of course, your daily posts, you have to switch content, right? You can't talk about your casino every single day, but once a week or twice a week you do casino, another day you talk about your MICE facilities, you talk to your leisure guests. So key here is to find out when your audience is online, when your buyer persona is online. It's highly likely that your meeting planners, your Julies, it's highly unlikely that they are in their buyer persona on a Saturday night, right? But on a Saturday night, your leisure audience might be online. So target your buyer personas on different times throughout the week. And with advertising, and I do have another slide about this later on, that's when you can target very specifically each and every one of your buyer personas.
Okay, thank you. The next question I've got from Emma, and she asked, I think it was on one of the slides you showed of the different social media usage and one for China. What is Reddit, as mentioned on your PowerPoint?
Yeah, Reddit is also a social media platform where people ask questions and share their like what they're doing. So it's basically a combination of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. It's very popular, but when I did my research, China uses it a lot. I think in the US they're also using it, but other than that, it's not a very popular platform.
Okay, and I've got one more question. What is link shortener?
I'm sorry, I should have explained that. Well, a link shortener is when you shorten a link in that sense that maybe your URL is myhotel.com/special promotions/summer campaign/weddings. That's a huge link. People are not going to remember that. Or on Instagram, your link is not clickable. So people have to enter it manually. In that case, you can use a shortener that says bit.ly is an example. It's then bit.ly/ like maximum 10 digits behind the slash. So when people click that, they are automatically redirected to your very long URL.
Right, okay. There's one other message here which is related to Reddit. Somebody has said Reddit means GU.
GU?
I guess. I'm not sure what that's referring to. If they want to make a comment.
No.
That's from Mesa Nanjing. Yeah. Does anybody want to make a comment on that or not? Okay. Any other questions? No, I think it's gone quiet.
Okay. Well, there's going to be a Q&A at the end. So if you still have questions, you can just type them in the chat and we'll get back to that at the end.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So that concludes the third section about engagement. So let's go to the fourth part of today's presentation. We're going to round it up, but we do have some interesting things to share after you answered me one more question, and I promise it's the last for today. Based on what you've heard until now, do you believe that social media is worth the investment? This is a very quick one, so we're doing like another 10 seconds to key in your answer. It's a simple yes or no. Great, it's a 100% yes. I'm happy to see that. Thank you for participating in this poll. Well, yeah, we have established today that social media is definitely worth the investment, and not only investment of money, but also time. So we have different platforms to reach our audience and also to engage with them, to connect with them. What we have not talked about a lot is about paid social media. So I'm going to touch on this topic a little bit because I believe that paid social media is a great outlet to improve your social media following and also to generate more traffic. So when you're ready, you can start allocating advertising budgets and start running social media ads. So I'm going to share here 3 benefits of advertising with you. Well, the first one, your ad is going directly to your target audience. So what that means is that you can target your audience based on demographics, on estimated income, on location, even on interest. So basically you can target all your Julies out there in one campaign. And that's also another reason why it's really important to go through the buyer persona exercise. Because if you don't do that, you either get boring and generic, or you're targeting the wrong people and you're just wasting your advertising dollars on people that are not your buyer persona. The second benefit is that it's a low-cost opportunity because you don't need a minimum budget. Well, okay, it's a $1 a day on Facebook, but that's only a very small budget. Other than that, there is no minimum. You can run an ad for a day, for 3 days, for a month, for 3 months. That's all entirely up to you. You can also choose to pay per click, meaning that you only pay for actual traffic to your website. So yeah, social media does cost more than the traditional organic social media, but in this heavily trafficked news feeds, every extra way to differentiate your posts from your competitors, I would say you need to take that opportunity. And then the final point is that you can customize and optimize your posts. And this may even be the most important one, because printed magazines, you pay, you give your ad, and that's it. You just sit back and relax, or maybe not relax, you sit back and wait. Whereas with social media advertisement, you can at any time look at the reporting insights. So you can see, my ad is not doing so well. Maybe I should change my tone of voice, or maybe I should change my image. Right? You can also see, oh, wow, my ad is doing absolutely great. So let's add 10 extra dollars into it, or 100, depending on your budget. Right? So you can leverage on those posts that are doing really well. You can also do set up A/B testing, whereby you run 2 different versions of one ad. And after like 4 to 7 days, you analyze which one is performing better, and that's the one you continue with. So it's not as static as print media. So yeah, those were the 3 reasons I wanted to share with you that I believe are really speaking for paid social media. On the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about influencers, because that's something we hear a lot these days, social media influencers. So that all comes back to word of mouth, which actually always has been the best way of advertising, because nothing beats a recommendation of a friend. People trust people, and there we are again with trust. And in this digital era, word of mouth is somewhat similar with social media influencers. So to understand this better, let's look at what exactly social media influencers are. Well, they're basically everyday people like you and me. They are on social media and they have established credibility, usually in a specific industry. So they are beauty influencers or travel influencers, game influencers, right? And they have a large and highly engaged following. With large, we talk about numbers anywhere between hundreds of thousands and millions of followers. A trend we've seen in the last year or so is that micro influencers are becoming more popular. And when we talk about micro influencers, we mean influencers with a smaller following, but with people that are even more engaged. You usually see that in the, let's say, the parenting niche. So you have a parenting blogger with only 5,000 followers, but out of the 5,000, there are 3,000 that really engage with them. So when targeting your family buyer persona, you might consider working with social media influencers that have less followers, but a higher engagement rate. So now we know what social media influencers are. So let's look at how they can elevate your social media strategy. There are a few reasons. First one is that it builds trust, because influencers are role models for their followers. People respect and also trust their opinions. They actually sometimes want to be like them or want to do what they do. And that maybe sound a bit weird, but it's really like celebrities. The second point is no ad blockers. Ad blockers are there to, as the word says, block ads from certain websites. So if you really don't want to see ads, you can set up an ad blocker and you can read blogs and read web pages without the interruption of ads. Influencers, social media influencers, are crossing over to the editorial territory. So ad blockers are not, they cannot they cannot block editorial content, right? So that's not an issue anymore. Copycat behavior, and that goes back a little bit to where we want to be like social media influencers. We want to have what they have. We want to do what they do. Now ask yourself the question, the last time you were scrolling your feed and you saw a travel picture, did you think, oh, I wish I could go there? Well, that's basically copycat behavior. A social media influencer, when they show that they have a relationship, a positive relationship with a brand, it will also improve brand awareness. And the last point, it's ROI. And I got this information from a study by Nielsen Catalina Solutions. And they found that when partnering with the right influencer, your ROI could be 11 times greater than traditional digital campaigns, which is quite a huge number. All right, so I already brought up the next slide, and that's social media reporting. Well, we, or maybe not you, but your boss, all like to see reports, right? It's always the question of the day, especially when budgets are involved. We want to know where money is spent, and we want to know what the returns are. So that's actually the great thing about digital, about social media, because almost everything is measurable. From impressions to click-through, conversions, we can get a lot of data from the reporting suites. Even better, we can get them in the middle of a campaign or at the start of a campaign. We don't have to wait until the campaign is finished. So we can always adjust our campaign as we go. Analyzing these data gives you a lot of insights, right? So you can always improve your next social media campaign. And you can ask yourself questions. Am I posting at the right times, right? You should try out posting on different times, because one question will probably be, what is the best time to post? And there's no one answer to this. It really depends on when your buyer persona is online. So that's something you can try out by posting on different times of the day. You can ask yourself if people respond better to short posts or to longer posts, and what type of posts get the most engagement. Do you see a spike when you actually do a behind the scenes post? Well, you might want to do an extra then in the next monthly calendar, right? Or if you see that one of your campaigns was totally not engaging, you might not want to repeat it, or you want to tweak it a little bit. You can also analyze the platforms. So which platform is the most effective for your target, for your objective. And then back to the buyer personas again, you might find a complete new audience. You might be able to add an extra buyer persona based on your insights. I can continue a little while with all these reasons. I won't. I think we all realize how important reporting is, because it simply provides valuable data that you can use to improve your future campaigns. So I think we're well over time already. So I'm going to put up the next slide where we see all the takeaways. After this, we do the Q&A. So today you learned all about integrating social media campaigns, aligning social media plans. You know how to find the right audience, and you have learned tools and strategies to create your buyer personas, which after you've done so, you know how to reach and how to engage with. We touch base on multi-channel strategies, and you know now how to choose the right channels to interact with your buyer personas. And last but not least, you should know now how you can stand out from the crowd with unique and engaging content. So that brings us to the Q&A session. So let's see if there are any questions from the audience.
Marlieke, thanks again. We do have one question from Jackie Nee. We're actually a factory manufacturer. Our business mode are like B2B. Do you have any suggestions on applications of social media for B2B?
Well, what I usually do is I start off with Facebook, because that's the platform where you can get the most insights from. Facebook groups is quite big. If you can find relevant groups, that's great. But otherwise, allocate a small budget to target your buyer persona. So first go through the exercise I shared, establish your buyer persona, and then set up a campaign on Facebook and ads whereby you're going to find those people and get them to follow your page, because that's how you build your following base. And when that's a relevant following base, then you can start putting up the content that's interesting to them.
Thanks, Marlieke. Got one more question. Any suggestions for getting social media reports?
Yes, I do. What I use, I use the reports from Facebook, and I put them all together in Google Data Studio. And that's how I got to this report. So this is all exported into Excel from Facebook and from Instagram. And that's what I put together in Google Data Studio. And every month, a new report is generated this way.
Any other questions from anybody? We've gone a little bit over time, so obviously people may need to go and do other things. But if you want to stay online asking more questions, please send them through. Marlieke's agreed to stay online for a little bit just to see if anybody's got any specific questions they'd like to ask. No, everybody's gone very quiet. Okay. I think we should wrap up there. And look, if you do have any further questions, please come back to us. We'll send you a copy of the presentation plus a couple of templates that Marlieke has put together to assist you in developing your social media program that will be sent out shortly after this presentation. We do ask you, first of all, thank you for joining the session today. If you've got any we're sending out a post-event survey, so we really appreciate if you could give us some feedback on what you thought of today's sessions and any suggestions on future topics that we can put forward to you in the future. IPIM's very keen to run a series of more sessions throughout the year, and they really welcome your input. If you want to hear more about social media, we've had a lot of interest in this particular session today, and if you've got anything specific about social media you'd like us to cover in future sessions, let us know. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you very much, Marlieke, for a great session. Thank you to Nigel, who's on our studio organising today's event. And thank you, of course, to IPIM for hosting this event today. And thank you very much to everybody participating. And we look forward to seeing you again online in a month or two. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.